Guys, welcome back and welcome to another episode of Triggered. I believe it's episode 17, and this one's going to be a hot one because we have Admiral, Dr., Congressman Ronny Jackson, the former head of the White House Medical Unit, and we're going to be discussing Joe Biden's cognitive decline, Fauci's failures, woke medicine, and what he's going to do about it in Congress. So that's going to be pretty hot, and it's going to be pretty important because we have to understand this from someone, A, who understands actual medicine, seemingly unlike Fauci, but also someone who's seen Joe Biden throughout the years, has witnessed the actual decline, and someone who has the guts to actually step out of it. So Admiral, Congressman, Dr. Ronny Jackson, I guess it depends on the order of which you think is most important for that one. I would have probably said Admiral, but we'll also talk about woke military, and maybe we have some thoughts on that one that's going to be rather interesting. But first, far-left Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg is going after President Donald Trump, my father, on bogus charges. Now, this prosecution isn't based on facts or the law or anything that even resembles that. It's pure Bolshevik-style witch huntery. And you're going to see why. Here's law professor Jonathan Turley laying it all out.
Ultimate gravedigger indictment. They literally dug up a claim, a theory from 2016, a theory that the Department of Justice decided did not warrant prosecution. And Bragg's own predecessor, of course, did not bring this case. And so it's really something that is rather patently obvious as a political prosecution, in my view. It's a very weak case legally.
Bragg is trying to try a federal campaign finance case in local court. Like, the feds decided to pass on it. The same feds who went after Trump for like 8 years trying to do it. The hot take on Twitter was that these guys are trying to do this. This was the hot, stupid take on Twitter over the weekend, like the dumbest take ever. That they're trying to do this to make sure Trump's the nominee. Like they weren't trying to put him in jail for the last 8 years. Like they didn't accuse me and the rest of my family of treason and other things. It makes no sense. The statute of limitation also appears to have run out, but who really gives a crap about law when you're weaponizing your office in a leftist state and where everyone there agrees with you? The Washington Post, of all places, the Amazon, Jeff Bezos owned Washington Post, like where logic and common sense go to die. Even they say the case has legal experts scratching their heads. Despite, again, 8 years of witch hunts and the Russia hoax and going after him there, even the feds didn't pursue the issue. I've heard from people that have said even in the radical leftist district attorney's office in New York, most of the prosecutors there don't know what the hell to do about this because even they, like the most radical of the radical left, realize that it's insane. Even they are worried about the precedent. As much as they hate Trump, even they are actually concerned about the law and maybe a little bit of the Constitution these days. And I understand the Democrats don't care about that unless they can lie about it or weaponize it to their benefit. But even they, I'm hearing, are shocked. And now, after years of nonsense, this is what they've got. This is where they land. And guys, correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't Trump already beat Stormy Daniels in court? Like, in all fairness, like, isn't she like paying his legal bills or something like that? I don't know. But you know, the district attorney is gonna district attorney, right? The Soros-funded district attorneys are gonna do whatever the guy that's bankrolling them wants them to do. The law be damned. The Constitution be damned. Your rights be damned. Because, you know, when you hate America, what difference does it make? This is like the Soviet secret police. Here's even a never-Trumper like Dana Perino on Fox talking about just how ridiculous it is.
And what does this say to the rest of the world?
Yeah.
We do a lot on democracy efforts around the world. in order to make sure that people understand it's okay to respect your opposition. You don't need to pursue them. This seems to be so contrary to that. What a way to make history.
Yeah, it's banana republic stuff if it's not a very strong case.
And it's not a very strong case. Guys, if it was a very strong case, the feds would have pursued it because they want to get their name in the lights. They want the headlines and the grandeur that comes along with going after Trump, just like the lunatics on the unselect January 6th committee, just like the idiots who tried the Russia impeachment, just like all of them. They want their name in the headlights. And this is going to be the case? You think this is now they finally got him? But perhaps what's most wild and what's most disappointing is that Florida Governor Ron DeSantis doesn't seem to think that this is a real issue, right? The guy that's supposed to be MAGA and all these people are saying, here's what he said in his own words. Check it out.
Real issues I got to deal with here in the state of Florida. We're obviously shutting down CBDC, which is important. We've got so many things pending in front of the legislature. I've got to spend my time on issues that actually matter to people. I can't spend my time worrying about things of that nature. So we're not going to be involved in it in any way.
DeSantis doesn't want to talk about Floridians. Trump is the foremost Floridian. Trump is the Floridian responsible single-handedly for getting Ron DeSantis elected so that he didn't lose out to the meth addict. Or remember the passed out photos from the gay orgy on the floor? DeSantis was going to lose bigly to that guy. And now Trump's being smeared again. And I genuinely had hoped, because I want there to be a strong Republican bench for the future, okay? But I also understand how this works, right? People push other people to run. The consultant class does that because guess what? They only get paid if you run because they take a piece of the ad buy and the commercial buy and the this buy and the that buy and a piece of the fundraising dollars, and they all get rich. But they don't get rich if you don't run. So I had hoped that perhaps DeSantis' week-long silence, while even rhino never-Trumpers, people who hate Trump, even leftists, stepped up, was him waiting to perhaps make a big statement at his already scheduled press conference. But I was wrong. DeSantis thinks that Democrats weaponizing the law to indict Trump is a, quote, manufactured crisis? It isn't a real issue? Seriously? Has he been watching anything? To me, as I tweeted, it's pure weakness. Now we know, while he was silent all weekend and totally owned by Paul Ryan and Karl Rove and his donors, that's what it is, guys. He's owned by the billionaire donors. 100% controlled opposition. Let's see which way the wind is blowing. Let's see which way they want me to respond, and I will do it. So I was hoping for a strong response, but we got a milquetoast response. We got weaker than most rhino Republicans. We got a weaker response than a lot of never-Trump Republicans. And guys, here's the deal. You can hire influencers to post videos of you dunking on what was like a hot Twitter take 10 days ago on some moron local reporter. You can get plenty of people to do that, as Ron has. But that doesn't make you ready for the big leagues. If you can't understand that this is a fundamental issue of our time, then you're not ready. Then it's not your time. As even people like Mike Cernovich, who have been big DeSantis supporters, just heartbroken that DeSantis doesn't understand what Soros DAs and the Bolsheviks are going to do to this country. He also said DeSantis blew it today. The only people saying otherwise personally hate Trump or were never Trump in 2016. And again, even some of those are coming out. And not just coming out like milquetoast, they're coming out significantly stronger than Governor DeSantis. Okay, again, I know when you're ready for the big leagues. I spent a lot of time with these guys. I spent a lot of time with DeSantis personally. The image created online by the paid influencers, guys, unfortunately, one-on-one, it doesn't exist. And this week made it clear. And for the record, I've been silent. I haven't gone after it, even when they were paying people to go after my father for the last few years. I get it. I understand the game. I also understand he's being pushed by the big money influencers, the big money donors, the big money consultants, because again, they don't make millions and millions of dollars in the 2024 cycle if he doesn't run, because Trump's not hiring them and probably no one else really has much of a shot. So DeSantis tries to take a dig at President Trump, who's being falsely accused and he can't even say his name in it. It proves that DeSantis is totally fine with a third world nation arresting their number one political opposition. It's not exactly MAGA, folks. Hey, you can say what you want, and I've been a supporter of Kevin McCarthy, and he proved and continues to prove each and every week that he's going to be a great speaker. He beat DeSantis to the punch and to the point by saying it doesn't matter if President Trump or a Democrat, if you're going after him. Our justice system should not be used to target political opponents, period. You shouldn't be okay with it. When even those that would be considered establishment by some, I know they would have said that about Kevin, they gave me a lot of hard time when I supported Kevin, but he's going after these people. When he gets it, when he's come around and he comes in hotter and heavier than the issue, than the MAGA governor, Ron DeSantis, than the alleged MAGA guy, you have to wonder, folks, and again, maybe there's a time, maybe in 4 more years of being a governor, he can figure out what's going on. Hey, Candace Owens, I think, said it really well. Is anyone really surprised by this, she says? Been saying this forever. DeSantis is a good governor, but he's establishment and will be a major disappointment to those who say otherwise. People disenchanted with Trump saw things in DeSantis that were never there. Again, guys, that's because they did a good job. It was smart. You hire the right influencers to clip something that I posted on social media or other people like me posted on social media 2 weeks prior. You add it into your press conference, again, while you're dunking on some idiot local reporter who can't really fight back. You get them to post it, and everyone on the team that's being paid retweets it, makes it go viral. Just because it happens on Twitter, folks, doesn't mean it's real life. Just because you own someone there doesn't mean you're ready for the big leagues or can do it. And this was clearly one of the biggest misses ever. I mean, Tom Emmer, other real rhino Republicans came out and took a significantly stronger stance on this issue. And guys, if you don't think that the Democrats would weaponize these DAs to come after your family, you haven't been watching. Look what they did to me and my family. Look what they will do. And if they can do it to us, where we can fight back, we have platforms, we have the financial ability to do it, you don't think they'll come after you? Guys, it's always a non-issue until they come after you, and they will. DC Drano had a great thought about this one. After this statement, I'm now confident that the free state of Florida will have an incredible governor through January 27th. Today was a massive letdown for the MAGA base. Yes, Trump is our guy for 2024, and there's no shaking that. But we just got a preview of how DeSantis would fight the regime in 2028. And his response was not just lackluster, but he got outflanked to the right by Kevin McCarthy. Steve Bannon had a great take. DeSantis looks weak, indecisive, and consultant focus group driven. That's what it is, guys. They did polling over the weekend to see where they got. The problem is, I think the Democrats picked up the phone. Franklin Graham, the great evangelical leader, great Christian, quote, I would like to ask Christians across the country to pray specifically for Donald Trump and that God's hand would be upon him. Everyone gets it, folks. Everyone understands exactly what we are up against. Everyone sees what the other side is doing, but somehow the MAGA guy didn't get it? Darren Beatty, ultimately you can't teach good political instincts. You either have it or you don't. Trump had it. You know what his focus group was? His focus group was going to the crowds. His focus group was the rallies, listening to the people. Not to the billionaire class, but again, that's the difference. Trump didn't have to take their phone calls. Sure, their money's helpful in a political race. Don't get me wrong. I understand exactly how this works. But the reason they want to move on for Trump is they want someone who has to take their phone call, who has to respond favorably. Because if that money goes away, they got nothing. Alex Bruzowicz said DeSantis has proven himself to be a complete fraud. And meanwhile, think about this. DA Alvin Bragg is also letting crime run rampant throughout New York City. You'd think that DeSantis could at least grab onto that. The DA is focused on Trump, on charges the feds won't go after, and not on the crime that's rampaging their city. They're going soft on violent repeat criminals while he goes on yet another anti-Trump witch hunt after, like 8 years? It never ends. Under Bragg, rape, felony assault, and robberies are all way up. Bragg would rather push politically motivated non-crimes than actually pursue real crimes. Think about that for a second, guys. Look at the stats. Look at what's happened, right? We're still going to do this and go after Trump yet again because I guess they can fundraise it off and get some headlines, and people don't think it's that bad. Guess what, guys? If you don't realize how bad it is, you probably don't even have a spot on the bench for the future of the Republican Party. So, like I said, I hadn't chimed in on this. I hadn't called anyone out by name other than the obvious ones. So this weekend was not only a disappointment, and honestly, not even about the Bragg thing. At this point, I'm just used to it. I'm used to them doing it, fundraising off of it. They get their things. It goes nowhere. I've been dealing with it for years. They wanted to try me for treason. Right? A crime punishable by death, minor details, right? Who cares at this point? But I was hoping we had a stronger bench. And trust me, again, when I talk about the political class and the consultant class, I know them well because I have to deal with them, with some of the people I help. I have half of them and a lot of those big donors offering me whatever it takes when I want to run because they want to run that campaign and they know there's money associated with. Guys, I'm not a baby to this game. I've been in it for a long time. I've seen it. I have the offers in text, okay? Whether it's the 7-figure offers from some of the donor class, donations to my campaign, or the consultants that want to run me for any office I want to run for. It's a big scam, folks. It's a grift. So pay attention and understand who actually needs those people's money, who actually doesn't need the job. Pay attention who chimed in and vocally opposed it. And more importantly, pay attention to who didn't. Okay? Nikki Haley didn't say anything either. Guess what? She's got about a snowball's chance in hell, but she's going to run for the warmongering neocon side. Again, DeSantis got shaky because he took the sort of milquetoast approach that, the milquetoast version of Trump on Ukraine. Like, why are we getting into another endless war? He said that finally copying Trump after months of silence, while running a de facto campaign for president for the last 2 years. And the donor class didn't like it. The consultant class didn't like it. That's their money. That's their lobbying contracts for the future. So pay attention, all right? Well, before we get to Admiral Dr. Congressman Ronny Jackson, I want to thank our sponsors, okay? Again, it takes guts to really sponsor a show like this because of the things that I'll say, because of the people I'll offend, because of the topics I will talk about that are uncouth, that will get you canceled elsewhere. So I want to thank and tell you about Field of Greens. Guys, from energy to sleep, they've got your whole body covered every hour of the day. Field of Greens is not a supplement. It's 100% whole foods. They're an American company based in Texas, and it's all manufactured in the United States of America, unlike most of our pharmaceuticals who we sub out to China. What could possibly go wrong? But the biggest benefit is better health promise. Field of Greens offers you that. Take Field of Greens, and at your next doctor's visit, if your doctor doesn't say something like, whatever you're doing, keep it up, return it for a full refund. What do you have to lose, guys? I've been taking it because I'm on the road so much that, honestly, I eat like crap. I have a little bit of the Trump gene as well with that stuff. Adding Field of Greens to my protein shake, I genuinely feel better. I'm getting real Whole Foods that I'm not getting at sort of airport fast foods and supplementing myself accordingly. So visit fieldofgreens.com and use promo code Don Jr., DONJR, to get 15% off your first order and another 10% off recurring orders. That's promo code Don Jr. when you go to fieldofgreens.com. You're going to love it. Now, guys, the other thing that you should be watching is the insanity going on in the market right now. So I want to make sure that I take the time to tell you about another one of our great sponsors, Goldco, and the importance of diversification. Gold, silver, precious metals can protect you and your retirement savings from inflation and dollar devaluation. Owning tangible physical inflation hedging gold and silver can help diversify your portfolio. From precious metals, IRAs to direct purchase of gold and silver, Goldco has helped thousands of Americans diversify and protect their retirement savings. Support companies who support you. You can diversify your portfolio with precious metals elsewhere, but do it and support those companies who don't support woke ideologies or companies who hate your guts. Go to donjuniorgold.com to learn more. That's donjuniorgold.com. You've been watching what's going on in the market for the last 10 days, folks. It's scary. Banks are collapsing. We don't know what's happening. The people in charge clearly also don't know what's happening. So if you want to diversify your portfolio, if you want to hedge against some of the insanity, gold and silver can be a great option. Go check out Don Jr., DONJR, gold.com. Learn more. You don't have to do anything, but let them take you through it and see what you can do to protect your portfolio in these tumultuous times. Really appreciate it, guys. Let's get on now with Admiral Congressman Dr. Ronny Jackson. This one's going to be pretty lit. You're going to love it. And I just want to also thank you guys for all of the incredible support throughout this journey doing this show. It's been absolutely awesome to be on here with you guys, and it's because of you guys that we're crushing it. So keep that going. Spread this message. Pass it on to your friends. Tell them about it because, in all fairness, mainstream media, social media, and others are not going to do that. So let's get the real news out to everyone. You guys are a part of this. It's totally organic. I appreciate you guys doing it, and you're the best. Thanks. Welcome back to another episode of Triggered. This one's going to be fun because we have my friend, Admiral Congressman Ronny Jackson. So which one is it? Can you choose? Does Congress take precedent over Admiral? I feel like there's fewer admirals than congressmen.
Honestly, Admiral means more than the congressman title for sure, especially after I've lived that life a little bit. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So I'd probably rank them Admiral, Doctor, Congressman. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Well, we obviously we forgot Doctor in there. Another big one that took some time. And probably actually all things I sort of want to break down. Yeah. Because I think we've seen such fundamental shifts in what all of that means, right? We see with ESG and some of these things. I think you actually, I was thinking about this like right before you got here. I was like, you may have been like the first visible case of politicized medicine. Yeah. Right? The difference between sort of science and narrative. Yep. And I remember it, we almost have to find the clip and like add it in here later on because it was the single greatest press conference in the history of time, certainly medical ones. And it was the one after you gave my father his first physical as president of the United States. And you basically got on stage like, listen, he eats a couple too many cheeseburgers, but like he's actually in solid health. Like, sure, could he lose a couple pounds? Yeah, we could all probably. And watching the press lose their mind. Like, so, doctor, are you saying there's a chance he could die? Well, I mean, I guess we could all get hit by this. So you're saying there's a chance? I mean, tell us about that experience, because I mean, you served under multiple presidents, sort of totally apolitical. Admiral in the Navy, you were a diver. We'll get into that next, but. You got up on this stage probably thinking you're going to deliver, here's the results of a medical form, and we just saw an absolute shit show. Tell us about it. I mean, I think we have to find the clip because the rage looking for it was like Dumb and Dumber, so you're saying there's a
Yeah.
chance he could die. Like, they were just praying for that moment of anything. What was that like?
Well, leading up to it, the press was going crazy. They were just trying to use this as another excuse. They tried everything they could to get rid of President Trump. Just even before, as you know better than anybody, before he was even in office, they were trying to get rid of him. Right? Everything they could possibly think of. So what was going on for the couple months prior to us doing his physical exam, they were coming out there saying, well, he's not physically or mentally fit to be president, and which is, they don't talk about anymore the mental part anymore because of the disaster.
Yes, well, now the mental part is. Well, we have to accept these things. John Fetterman being the other example.
Right,
I've been labeled as. They've tried to cancel me because I'm like, hey, I don't know, like, is he fit to serve in the Senate? And again, why should we hold a senator to a different standard than the president? But I'm an ableist, someone who discriminates against those with disabilities, according to the media, for being like, I don't know, guys, like, is it wrong for me to expect a United States senator or a president to have basic cognitive function?
Right. And when it was President Trump, he never did anything or said anything. You can go back and look, he never said a single thing that would give anyone any reason to believe that he was cognitively impaired. Nothing. They didn't like his style. They didn't like his tweets. They didn't like his personality. And
they didn't like that he's opening up the kimono to exactly what they're doing and draining the swamp. I remember the one time, I guess he picked up a water bottle like this. And oh my God!
Yeah.
And that's what's sort of perhaps the most amazing is watching that cognitive dissonance. The way, again, they attacked me for questioning like clear examples of not being able to complete a sentence, multiple cases of falling down the stairs, forgetting the person that you're introducing. So Trump takes the cognitive test, and that's not enough.
Right.
But me saying, well, maybe these people should be doing the same. How dare you?
Yeah. And remember back then, they were demanding the press and the social media, everybody was demanding that Trump get a cognitive test, right? And we did one. And no president has ever had one before, ever.
And he voluntarily did that, right?
He voluntarily did it. I mean, he actually asked me, about doing it. And so we did it. And, of course, not only did he was he like way better shape physically than I thought he was going to be, and I had all the objective data there. I had his cardiac stress test, I had all of his labs, I had everything there. I made it all available to the press that day, every single bit of it. We weren't hiding anything. Everything was out in the open. He was in phenomenal physical shape for his age. I mean, his cardiac testing, his stress test was through the roof. He was easily in the top 5% for a man his age, cardiac-wise. And then we dropped the bomb on him. We told him that we did the cognitive screening test, the MOCA, and that that he scored a perfect score. And they were just disarmed. They didn't know what to do.
The meltdown was like literally, like I said, I think it was the first example of politicized medicine. We've seen a lot since then, so I want to unpackage some of that, right? Where the science doesn't exactly line up with what we were told. The delta between the Fauci emails to friends and peers versus what was said on TV. But that was the first time to say, but wait, like, isn't this the science? Like, here's an objective test, right? There's no politicization of that. You may not like that he did well, but trying to find the nuance of why it's different and how all of a sudden that's now, that's off the table now. You can't ask these questions when you have someone clearly failing on so many levels.
Right. Well, like I said, they were jumping up and down demanding a cognitive test, and now we have this cognitive disaster in the White House. They don't say anything about it. It's crickets. Nobody talks about it, and that's what irritated me when I first got into Congress is the fact that this man has obvious cognitive issues. Biden does. Like you said, he didn't know where he's at. He slurs his speech. He shuffles when he walks. I mean, he didn't know. Sometimes he didn't even know he's president. To be honest with you, he forgets he's president, and no one is making any comments about. No one's demanding that he get a cognitive test.
Correct.
Except for me. I mean, I've been saying it since before I was even elected to office 2.5 years ago.
Well, by the way, you spoke with me when I was writing my book, Triggered. And this was like, I wrote my book, Liberal Privilege, actually. I wrote it during the pandemic because I was like, all of a sudden we're locked down. I'm like, we got to sort of break down the hypocrisy of that. It was a lot about sort of the Biden corruption versus what they claimed we were doing. And again, it's sort of that Saul Alinsky rules for radicals. Like, accuse them of doing what you're doing. So you were a case of that. And I called you, and you were very clear as a doctor, like, hey, I wasn't Biden's direct doctor, but I observed him at his time in his White House, and I observe him now, and they're different people. Right. I mean, and we spoke about that in the book, and I think you got a call even from Obama, who you never said anything health-wise. Like, maybe he smoked, and maybe that was bad, and just like Trump maybe ate a couple too many cheeseburgers, but they were both perfectly physically capable of doing that job, so that. How is that, watching someone like that come in and try to defend
what we all saw with our own eyes.
Right.
Like, again, the media did whatever they could. Big tech put $1 trillion behind making sure that there's nothing to any of these things, just like all the fact checks that have proven to be 100% right. Every conspiracy theory that's now been proven right, not debunked. Talk about that, because that's sort of interesting, watching that happen when you were clearly apolitical until they basically started attacking you, your credibility, your medical degree, your qualifications, literally everything. And honestly, even the promotions that my father then wanted to give you before any of this even happened, after serving our country for decades.
That's right. And I didn't realize it at the time because I was pretty naive, because like you said, my job was apolitical. I was active duty military. I was a Navy Rear Admiral serving as a physician to the president, taking care of not only the president and the first family, you guys as well, but the office of the president. I had an apolitical job, and I kept it that way for 14 years while I was at the White House. During Bush, Obama, and the Trump administration, I stayed apolitical. That day that I got up there and I objectively presented his physical exam and his cognitive results and everything. I didn't realize it at the time, but looking back, that was the day that the far left decided that was the day that I got the Trump stamp on me, which I am proud to have, right? That is the day.
Scarlet letter.
That is the day that I got the Trump stamp on me, and that is the day that the press decided if they could ever cut my heart out, they were going to do it. And then we can talk about
and
this
they
later.
tried.
I'll fast forward to the VA nomination when he nominated me for the VA secretary. The knives came out. It was crazy. I tell people all the time, I'd never seen anything like that happen before. Sarah Sanders, a bunch of people in the White House had never seen anybody attacked as aggressively as they were attacking me for those 2 weeks that this was going on. But it's happened multiple times since then. I was the first one of the first ones. I tell people I got Kavanaugh before Kavanaugh did. I was
By the way,
100%
100%
I was
right.
the pregame. I just didn't know it at the time.
I mean, that had to be interesting, and I'll say this, because, as you know, I had a really good relationship with a lot of guys on my Secret Service detail, like so much so that they moved guys off of my detail because they were like, oh, you're too comfortable with this. I was like, I promise you guys, like, you want me comfortable with my guys, because if something goes wrong, like, I'm the guy that thinks I'm always right. Like, I get that. Like, I want to like the guy because I'll trust him a lot more.
Everybody knew you had more guns than they did.
Well, we won't even get into that one. Clearly. So, we had a good time, but, the one sort of thing, and 4 years of guys rotating in and out. I mean, that was the one thing they said with you. You took care of those guys too. When they were going on international trips, when they were pulling multiple day type all-nighters, you were the guy that took care of everything that they ever needed and did so professionally. Those guys love you. And that stuff means so much more to me than if the boss likes you. When the guys that you could blow off. I don't need to pay attention. He's the lowly whatever. He's not high up on the totem pole. He can't help my promotion or my career. When those guys are a huge fan, that's when I'm like, okay, now I respect it so much more. And so watching that attack on you, again, a rear admiral, obviously served in the Navy, a doctor, served in the White House. So if you were capable of serving the president, you probably know something about the medicine side too. You would think, leftist logic has changed a little bit. But when they nominated you then for the VA position, to watch all of that stuff not matter, and it wasn't like you were also just, I came into the Navy as, you were a Navy diver, right? Like EOD, like bomb tech, underwater, like, so you were like a real, not like a bureaucrat, or even, I don't mean to belittle it, but like, a doctor coming into Navy just to be a doctor, like you started off in the Navy as like, a guy getting shit done.
Absolutely. I mean, I was a Navy deep sea diver. I was assigned to the Marine Corps. I was in Iraq with the Marines. I ran a surgical shock trauma platoon on the battlefield between Fallujah and Ramadi. All of this stuff before I got to the White House. Then I got to the White House, and like you said, everything was perfectly fine. The accusations that came out that they threw out there, all a bunch of garbage, right? But even the time frame was supposedly from during the Obama administration. If I was such a disaster, right?
Why did they keep him?
Why was and Obama signed my evaluations. He personally hand wrote and signed, all the presidents did. They hand wrote and signed my evaluations. And you can go back and look at all the evaluations that he put together for me, and he has nothing but like flattering things to say. And he promoted me to the Navy Rear Admiral. Your dad gave me my second star. He gave me my first star. So if I was such a problem, and I was out, I was drunk at work all the time, like they were saying, and they said I went out and went to Secret Service Christmas party, got drunk and wrecked a government vehicle. Ridiculous.
By the way, and what's sort of like, you say, you're right, you were the first, you were like the precursor to Kavanaugh, right? If those things actually happened, once you were then not going to go forward with the VA nomination, well, those are serious offenses.
Yeah.
You would think there'd be follow-up. But it's like, no, we got what we wanted. That was all
Yeah.
bullshit, right?
Yeah.
Same with Kavanaugh. Like, he's not really a gang rapist. I'm like, wait, he was on the Circuit Court of Appeals. He was a public figure, known in the judiciary, but he wasn't a gang rapist until he was going to that next level. So that's what was the worst about it. It was like, it was clearly nonsense because they dropped it the second you weren't the guy anymore. And yet the people they would put in those positions did not serve in the Navy the way you did, or barely, I mean, you had the ultimate experience. You served a high level of medicine, whether it's, again, battlefield experience with trauma, White House serving for the President of the United States, but also then actually as sort of a combat guy and Navy diver. I mean, who better? Who has a better resume to actually be the director of the VA? They just like, oh, well, it's a good thing to put on someone's resume who's never been in the Navy, who's never been a doctor. It's like they can direct the VA, and that's why you had the disasters that you did that I think my father improved upon a lot.
Well, now if I'd have been, a transgender minority midget or something, that's all you need.
By the way, that's like question number. How much faster in today's Navy would you have become an admiral if you do something like, you know what, bitches, I'm trans.
Like, it would have been overnight. I'd be running the whole place by now.
But like, we laugh because it's funny. Except it's not funny because it's also true. Talk about that a little bit. I mean, you see whether it's Rachel Levine. It's like, well, if qualifications don't mean anything if you can check a couple boxes off. We saw that with, what is it, Sam, whatever, Britain, our nuclear waste disposal. Well, they're non-binary and they wear dresses and their pictures. He can be a klepto. I mean, if you're going to be in charge of our nuclear
Buttigieg, all of these guys.
You're the first lesbian, black, immigrant. So that therefore that's your qualification. And then when I attack it, they go, "How dare you say that?" I go, "Well, you spent 6 months touting how this is so wonderful. Like what? Like how about like competence?" So I mean, talk about that in the military. 'Cause, I mean, you served, you did real stuff. It's got to be demoralizing for people going in. If you're a good patriotic American and you want to serve your country, like I'm like, hey man, like the guys we actually would want fighting for us, preserving liberty, freedom, everything we believe in, like I'm like, you're going nowhere in today's military as far as I'm concerned. And I hear this from other guys that served, so I didn't. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that, because it's crazy.
It's a big problem. I think during the Obama administration, during the 8 years of the Obama administration, they started vetting senior flag officers and general officers for their political beliefs, which you shouldn't do, right? It should not be a political job. But they were looking into this. They were trying to figure out who has conservative leanings, who has liberal leanings, and then there's a group in the middle, basically, that'll just do whatever they tell them to do, regardless of what they think. I think they went
Which actually probably is... it is an apolitical position, but unfortunately everything has been politicized.
But some of those people are people that, like General Milley, that just won't push back. They won't say no when they're supposed to say no.
You mean, General, I want to learn about white rage?
Exactly,
I'm like, how about learn about like winning wars? Like,
General,
I don't know anything.
General, what were you doing when the Taliban was falling all over Afghanistan and our troops were about to get slaughtered at the in Kabul? Oh, I was doing book interviews with Bob Woodward. That General Milley. I mean, this guy's he's a perfect example. And there's a bunch of them out there, but they promoted the ones that had liberal leanings and the ones that were kind of in the middle that they could manipulate. The ones that had conservative leanings, they just let them time out. So over an 8-year period, we got 2 stars, 3 stars, and 4 stars generals and admirals that were very politically motivated, very woke, very liberal, and the rest of the military wasn't like that, and still not like that for the most part.
And I always make that distinction. It's like the FBI. We've seen the same thing happen there. There's a difference between the door kickers. The guys doing the work. It's funny, when I made comments in a speech a couple of months ago, I talked with guys in the teams, and they were telling me, they were like, no, we spend more time doing diversity training than we do shooting. I'm like, wait, like you're the elites. Like you're doing that? Like what, how many female are you dealing with, in the battlefields in Afghanistan or Iraq? And they're like, none. They're like, well, so I said this in a speech, and they literally, Don Jr. doesn't know shit. He can't. He doesn't have friends. And I'm like, Rob O'Neill jumps in and like, SEAL Team 6 guy killed Bin Laden. He's like, no, he's right, and it's a serious problem. Carl Higbee, it's going on. And again, I actually wouldn't care nearly as much if we were actually winning wars. but we're not. We're getting our asses handed to us. China's testing hypersonic nuclear capable missiles, and we're sitting there making sure we have drag queen story hour on a military base.
Yeah.
How, as you've seen that, how bad is the problem? I think people are sort of waking up to it again, because it's not like we have results to say, okay, well, this stuff is working.
Yeah.
The ESG, the DE, it's working in the military, and we're becoming a better fighting unit.
Yeah.
Which they're telling us it somehow is, but it's
us
clearly
that,
not based on results.
We're gonna fix it, and I say we're gonna do that. We're starting to fix it already because we have the majority in the House now. The Republicans do.
Mm-hmm.
So we're starting to have investigations. We're starting to have hearings. We're starting to call some of this stuff out, and we have a little bit of authority now, being we control the purse strings in the upcoming National Defense Authorization Act to put some teeth into getting this stuff out of our military. But they did a lot of things. I was telling you that they went after the Flag and General Officer Corps and tried to vet them. They were doing it. Nobody, a lot of people don't believe me, but the reason that there was a mandate, a COVID vaccine mandate in the military was to try to vet it and try to get some of these people with conservative leanings out. They realized early on that most of the people that were refusing to get the vaccine in the military were conservative by nature to some extent, and they realized this is a perfect opportunity to get rid of all these people, to get them out of here and make room for all the the new recruits that we want coming in.
So can we find who was leading those charges and do something about them?
We're working on that. Yep.
Is that a priority
Absolutely.
for you?
And that's part of the problem. I mean, honestly, Don, one of the reasons why this stuff keeps happening, nobody's ever held accountable. Nobody. Who got fired for Afghanistan? Not a single person got fired for Afghanistan. Nothing happened. Nothing happens no matter what in the military anymore. No one's held accountable.
Well, I talk about it a lot because the Afghanistan one was like the one that I'm just like, oh my God, like it's so much worse than I thought.
Yeah.
Again, Milley getting up on stage, and saying, we could not have seen this coming. I'm like, really, motherfucker? Like, you couldn't see this? I saw it coming, and let's be clear, folks, because someone will say, I know jack shit about Afghanistan.
Yeah.
Okay? I saw it coming.
Yeah.
Because you'd have to be an imbecile to not see it coming. Anyone who served on the ground that I know saw it coming.
Yeah.
They had to accelerate the timeline. And I'm not saying we should be an endless war. So trust me, Trump's, myself, we're all like, hey, what are we doing there? Just like I'm saying about Ukraine. I was one of the first Republican, if not maybe the first Republican, maybe me and J.D. Vance, talking about like, what exactly are we doing in Ukraine right now? I don't understand. We're helping a corrupt nation against another corrupt nation because NATO wanted to move, the border of NATO closer to Russia, and sort of like, I'm like, I don't understand.
Yeah.
Where's $130 billion going? Do we want to be in a proxy war with Russia? But, Milley was on stage. He couldn't see it coming. Where anyone, anyone who'd been there, and including my I guess it was my son Spencer. I think he was 8 at the time.
Yeah.
He was like, "Hey, Dad, why would we do that? Why did we pull out?" He called it the Army because he was 8. Why did we pull out the Army before we pulled out the Friends? Then he didn't even know what the biometric scanners was, but he was trying to say like biometric. He didn't know what it was. But he goes, "Dad, why would we leave the machines that would let them know who was helping us for the last 20 years? I don't understand." This was an 8-year-old.
Yeah.
I picked him up from school that week, and like that's when it hit me just how sick it is, just how bad when an 8-year-old is like asking all the questions our press should be asking, our generals should have known, and they couldn't have seen it coming. What was worse was then watching the Secretary of State, because then the political side, we're shocked and dismayed, right? Blinken, we're shocked and dismayed that the Taliban did not install a more diverse and inclusive government in Afghanistan. And I am literally there thinking that I'm being punked.
Yeah.
Like, there's no way someone's this stupid. Like, you're shocked. You mean the guys that were throwing homosexuals off buildings and dousing journalists in fuel in cages and lighting them on fire, you're shocked and dismayed that they didn't have, like, a trans coalition in the Taliban government? Like, these are not serious people.
Yeah.
And you saw that, like, it was interesting watching the mandates in the military. I want you to expand on it a little bit because you saw, like, the elite warriors. Those guys were the ones not wanting to do it. And they were fine being like, okay, you're out of the military. It's like, wait, the guys you spent decades training, the guys you want, like, no, we'll replace them with, we'll find an obligatory female who ran a little bit faster than the other females, may not be able to carry, Carl Higbee off a battlefield, but like, who cares?
Yeah. But
that's a small price to pay for diversity.
They're going to know what his pronouns are.
They will know his pronouns. And same thing with the fighter pilots. And I'm like, wait a minute, we spent millions getting these guys up to speed. And I have friends, now, out of the I went to a boarding school that was a big feeder school to the Naval Academy. So I had friends that flew, F-18s and all. You hear the stories, and it's like, these guys, that flew F-18s were like, hey man, if I was going today, like I wouldn't go in because I'd have no chance to be able to excel because there's going to be someone who's probably not as good or that's going to get a chance because they check off X number of boxes, like the rapid ascent to Trans Admiral.
That's all they're looking at now. If they look at your performance reports and stuff, the first thing they look at is race and gender and other social issues. Did you switch your gender? Even more important than gender itself.
Exactly. Gender doesn't matter so much, but if you switch, that's like huge. Women's it's a bonus. That's a bonus. But if you could be a dude that becomes a woman, it's like that's the holy grail of who I want serving in the military. This is what could go wrong.
Yeah, but it's just gone crazy, and I mean it really is destroying our military. It's destroying the morale, and we're going to fix it in Congress. But it's going to take us a while, but yeah.
Okay, it feels like the problem's so entrenched, though.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, it's coming from the top, and it's not just the guy at the top. It's levels down because of what they've done. How do you fix that in 2 years?
I don't know.
Because I feel like they're going to try to run out the clock. I mean, this is a consistent theme on the show. It's like, how do we pick? This would be a big one, right? Because we have a tendency. And I always say it, like I'm literally as guilty of it as anyone. Which hey, attack the shiny object, but you got 100. Yeah. But you only have so much time.
Yeah.
You only have so many hours, days, weeks, months, and the other side's going to slow roll everything.
Yeah.
How do you prevent that? How do you pick the big things and do it? Obviously, the insanity in the military would be a big one because like we have real threats like China, which take a distant backseat to the woke ideology happening in the military right now, but how do you prevent that from just getting run out?
Well, I mean, I think you have to pick your fights. Like you said, we have all these select committees that we set up that we're doing investigations and stuff. And, each one of those committees sit down and they make a list of priorities about what they want to investigate, what's the most important. And I think, national security issues, the defense of our nation, the stuff we're talking about with the military becoming woke, or the weaponization of our government with the DOJ and the FBI and, everybody else that's, that's being used to come after.
A mother is a domestic terrorist, but actual terrorists have an excuse because, it's social justice or something.
The teachers' unions, for crying out loud. I mean, the damage they've done to this country is just, you can't even quantify it anymore. It's they're a disaster, right? So I think we're going to go after those things selectively. We're going to stop some of it. We're not going to be able to correct all of it because we don't have the Senate and we don't have the White House, obviously. And, we pass a lot of good legislation out of the House now. It goes to the Senate. It just dies in the Senate, or unfortunately, I'm going to be honest with you, sometimes we have some Republican senators that vote for some of this garbage.
Oh, this is a very consistent theme. Jim Banks on last week talking about because there's maybe 5 senators I'd actually want to be in a fight with, whether it's out of 50.
Yeah.
I mean, think about how insane that is. You know what I mean? 5 out of 50, 10% are guys that you'd be like, okay, that guy will actually fight.
Right. Nothing more frustrating.
And we roll over like they did on Eric the Garcetti vote last week. It's like we give the Democrats all these wins because those guys don't have the balls to actually engage.
What about the omnibus that was passed at the end of the last Congress? 17 Republicans in the Senate voted for that garbage.
Give them the win. What could go wrong?
Nothing more frustrating than being in the House and holding the line, basically working your butt off and getting this legislation through and then turning it over to the Senate so they can just, trash it or throw it away. And then if it gets past them, then Biden's going to veto it anyways. But we're going to stop a lot of this stuff. I pray to God that we get President Trump back in 2024 so that we can officially go in and start cleaning house again.
You need someone to nuke.
Oh,
you, at this point, like, it's not like, hey, we can do little fixings here and there. Like, you need to break down the systems as far as I'm concerned because they've all been corrupted.
Well, I'll tell you, and I know you're biased because he's your dad, and I am too because I work for him as well.
But I also understand competence. Like,
I know, right?
I want Joe Biden to be successful.
Yeah.
Because I'm an American.
Yeah.
I have 5 young kids.
Yes.
I want them to grow up in an America that we recognize, but I don't see any of that.
Yeah.
Frankly, I'm shocked at just how quickly they could destroy.
Yeah.
I mean, and in all fairness, like, we can disagree about, like, all they had to do was not do anything on some of these things. Just leave it alone.
Right.
But they have to try to fix it. They got to change it. Let's destroy energy jobs, but we'll become dependent on Iran. Like, what could go wrong?
Right.
Venezuela, a regime we don't recognize. Like, we're begging them for oil, but we have it in our ground, but we won't let our guys do it, or we'll put restrictive things on it. We need to push for, electric vehicles mined by, African child slave labor, owned all by China. Like, what could go wrong allowing them to control all of that? And by the way, doing so, again, doesn't hurt their ESG score. That child labor is mining lithium and cobalt in mines all over the world because they sub that out, so it doesn't count.
Right, and let's not drill for oil here. Let's get dirty Venezuelan oil.
Let's do
Russian oil.
Let's get extra sulfur crude. That's just more environmentally filthy. But we can hold down good, hardworking American jobs. Like it's hard to look at what they're doing and not say they're trying to destroy America.
They are, but I'll tell you, here's what I think happened, Don. I didn't figure it out for a long time, but I think that Joe Biden came in, he realized that he was probably going to be a one-term president, because I think, he's going to get beat if he even announces that he's going to run. But, I think that he realized he's going to be one-term president. Everybody realized right off the bat that he's cognitively impaired, and he may not even make it 4 years. I think they decided that his legacy was going to be all of this woke garbage, just to turn this country upside down, just to burn it to the ground. So I say they've done a lot of damage in 2 years, a lot of damage to this country. That's why I say we have to have President Trump back, because I'm going to tell you the difference between President Trump and every other Republican that's running. And I've seen this because I've been in the White House, I've been in the Oval Office when these discussions are taking place. Everybody talks a big game. They get to the Oval Office. They get all of these folks from DOD, these political advisors, people from the West Wing, their senior staff in there. They start talking them out of stuff because it's politically not advantageous right now. It's not the right thing to do. It's not the right time to do it, so on and so forth. And they give in, right? And they give in, and they all go in, and they'll say that they're going to go in and they're going to clean house, and they're going to go into these agencies, and then you get rid of these woke career employees that are running our government and destroying our way of life. But nobody's going to actually do it except for your father. He's going to do it because he's been there, he's done that, he's lived it. And I guarantee you, he's going to be the only person that's got the guts and the balls, quite honestly, to go in there and do what needs to be done. Everybody else is going to back down when push comes to shove.
Yeah, they say that it was like, well, he's a lame duck president. It could only be 4 years. I'm like, perfect.
Yeah, exactly.
Because then you don't worry about getting reelected.
Right.
You worry about doing what needs to be done to save our country. Now, the one place I'll disagree with you on it, I don't know that Joe Biden actually thinks about this as his legacy. I look at Joe Biden, I'm like,
I agree.
An 80-year-old Irish Catholic, you think he believes that 3-year-olds should...
It's the people around him.
Correct. He's a convenient puppet for all those things. Obama probably felt exactly the same way, but he wasn't going to risk his legacy doing shit that is insane.
Right.
But they'll throw Joe Biden under the bus. He's enacting Democrat policy. I'll say he's actually probably been more effective than Obama, because no one actually cares whether the American public likes him. So I think they're able to actually get a lot more out of him, because if his legacy is tarnished, if it's trash, if everyone thinks of him as like Jimmy Carter, in terms of not Jimmy Carter the human, but Jimmy Carter the president, disastrous policies, that's fine with them. They don't care. And he doesn't know the difference.
He's old, he's frail, he's cognitively impaired. People cut him slack. They don't even really hold him responsible. Not to mention the fact that everybody knows it's not him doing it. So it's cloaked. You really don't even know who's pulling the strings. He's just the empty vessel through which it all comes out, No. So, I think you're right. I think he's horrible in that regard. There's no accountability.
Yeah, that aspect of it is scary. The accountability, the disastrous results.
Yeah.
And again, we always talk about sort of not being in a fair fight.
Yeah.
You experienced this, right? You're everything from the media going after you to big tech going after you to censoring you to canceling you to Obama calling you to what do you do? You're casually observing. If you went after Trump during Trump's presidency, they tried to get you to do it. I guess that was the whole thesis of that press conference was try to get you to come up with that would have been fine.
Yeah.
And so it's that double standard that we're not playing by. So now in the House, I guess you've started an advisory committee free of ESG.
Right.
Tell us a little bit about that, because again, these are the fights I think we need to be having. In there, we need to be willing to go up against the insanity.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about what you're doing there, what you hope to achieve. What do you think so far the House has accomplished? And the track that they're on, because again, we are up against that clock, in my opinion.
Well, this is going to be another one of those examples where we're going to get it through the House, and I pray we get it through the Senate, and then we'll put him on the spot to have to assign it. But President Biden, day one of his administration, signed an executive order, basically demanding or instructing every single branch of the executive office of the president. That's the Secretary, that's the Treasury Department, the Ag Department, the Defense Department, the Energy Department, all the different departments that have a cabinet secretary. He directed every one of them them to put together an advisory group that's based on racial equity, right? And to start driving everything they're doing, their hiring practices, the way they spend their money, everything is based on ESG and racial equity. So the bill I put together basically stops that. It says you cannot make hiring decisions, you cannot make spending decisions, you can't do any of that stuff. You can't have advisory boards that push that within these departments. We're going to legislate that it's law that you cannot do that. That's the goal. I mean, it's going to be, like I said,
because I mean, it shouldn't be, especially with the decisions that these people would be making, right? These aren't like, hey, it's not a supermarket checkout, a job that, hey, it's a great, respectable vocation, but like, these are people making $1 trillion decisions, life-altering decisions. These are the people that are deciding our future relative to that of China. Like, I don't think China's saying, well, we're not going to take the top 20 best, most qualified people because someone's checking a box. And that's what we've essentially done. It was like, we've eliminated the notion that if someone doesn't check one of those boxes, but they also happen to be the most qualified, they don't get the job. Like, how do we expect society
we set up
to
a system
even...
where they're not even going to look at their stuff. They're not even going to be considered because they didn't check the right boxes.
You don't even make it through the front door for the interview.
Exactly. And then when he put that executive order out and set that mandate out for them to do this, it set up competition between the cabinet secretaries to see who could be the most woke. We had, like, for example, like the Secretary of Agriculture pushing stuff out. They're going to do disaster relief, for farmers, but only for black farmers, right?
I saw some of those.
Come on, are you kidding me? Everybody was devastated by the storm or the drought or whatever was the issue there, right? But only black farmers are going to get, this is just, two wrongs don't make a right. To turn around and just
they're legislating racism, right? They're literally creating racism, they're also legislating it. Because again, why would a black farmer have an additional benefit to his white farmer who happens to be a neighbor? They could be great friends. Why are we just trying to ensure, frankly, in this case, ensure a disproportional outcome? Because by even doing it, you're saying essentially that the black farmer's not capable. That's not me saying it. It's them essentially saying it's like, so if the two people have a 1,000-acre farm, a 10,000-acre farm, and they're neighbors, you're only going to help the black farmer. Are you saying he's not capable of being just... How do we know he's not more competent than the white farmer that may need the help?
Right, and that's what they're doing with every single thing they do. Every single bit of money that the Biden administration spends, and they get access, they get to decide how they want to spend a lot of the money that gets budgeted. The money goes out, Congress approves these big spending bills and everything, and then they get to decide how a lot of that money's spent. They're using their rulemaking, their executive power and all this to push it based on race. One of the things we're doing in Congress right now through the appropriations process is every single time we pass a bill, we have to put language in that bill that stops that before the bill even leaves the House, so that it's illegal for them to do that. Otherwise, they'll do it. Then it has to get challenged in court. It ultimately makes it to the Supreme Court where they say that's completely unconstitutional. It's racist. It's unconstitutional.
They just hope to run out the time and money.
But they've taken advantage of it for 2 years by the time they get to that point. You know what I mean? They know this.
And then they have their plants. That's sort of how they took over all of these branches. Again, I make the distinction between the FBI door kicker, the guy doing the work, who's a patriotic American, and the guy that's making the decisions, who's been promoted and wouldn't know how to kick in a door if you paid him. So, how do you assess progress so far with the House GOP? Because again, and so everyone understands, because I saw this with Trump. Why didn't he do X, Y, Z? It's like, well, because Paul Ryan wouldn't bring up the bill to be able to do it. Like, people don't necessarily always understand process, right? We don't have the Senate. We don't have the White House. We have a very slim majority in the House. So, I don't expect us to do a lot of legislation. What we can do is a lot of blocking. What we can do is play with the power of the purse strings, the money, which allows all this bullshit to actually happen. So, what do you see, so far? Are you pleased with what you're able to do with, sort of the limited with the limited power that you tools you have? I'm actually pretty pleased with the
limited stuff we have, because don't forget, we just have a small majority. We have a 5-seat majority, right? So if 5 Republicans break ranks, then we're back to where we were last time. We can't do anything, right?
If that was the Senate, they'd all, it wouldn't even be close.
But Kevin's doing a great job. Kevin McCarthy's doing a great job of keeping everybody together right now. We're on the same page. These hearings are making a difference. We're exposing a lot of stuff that's going on. We're, because they're forced to cover it now. They got to put it on C-SPAN. They got to cover it. And some of the networks that never covered any of this stuff before are now forced to cover it, because we're having hearings in Congress about it. And so we're opening the eyes of a lot of Americans out there that didn't really know what was going on, because to be honest with you, if you watch CNN or MSNBC, you have a completely different view of this world than if you actually out, looking at what's really happening or getting, reliable news, because they've covered stuff up. They've just refused to talk about certain things, and they've spun things in favor of the liberals and the far left. So we're exposing a lot of what's going on through the hearing process. We are going through and we're manipulating some of these bills and appropriations, like I said, and we're starting to tighten down the purse strings and put restrictions on how the money's spent. And I think that we're going to pass stuff, and these bills that come out, they're not going to be completely wasted. Even last time when I was passing stuff, when I was putting bills together that were going absolutely nowhere because we didn't have the House, the Senate, or those bills were ready to go, man, and they were meaningful bills. And as soon as we got the House back, we put those back in, and we're recycling those, and they're passing the House now. Next time we're going to do the same thing. They're going to pass the House, the Senate, and they're going to get signed by President Trump. So we're pushing forward, and I think we are. I am pleased with what we're doing with the small majority that we have, but I want to do more.
So what would be your top priorities right now? Again, we talk about there's 1,000 things we could all go after. There's 100 that you could prioritize. Yeah. What would be your top 2 or 3 that you want to make sure we can do things, and where perhaps also you can effectuate the most change, right? Yeah. There's going to be things. Military stuff, obviously, the medical stuff, obviously. You have a better insight. You have an understanding of how to actually be the driving force behind it, not just a vote for it.
The thing that scares me more than anything is the weaponization of our government, right? When you have the IRS, the FBI, and the DOJ picking winners and losers, and specifically going after people that have conservative values, people that don't agree with the administration, that is super dangerous. It doesn't get any more scary than that, right? Because these people, they have...
Yeah, Mao would be blushing right now.
Absolutely.
A concerned mother at a PTA meeting is a domestic terrorist. Now, if you're looting a store in the name of George Floyd, I don't know, that's social justice. That's fine. That's not... It's... Yes.
I think that's one thing. I think that's number one. Number 2 is the southern border. Freaking disaster, man. We've got to shut the southern border down. It's a disaster on so many levels right now. We have...
Well, you're a congressman from Texas, so talk about just, because people say, it's not... The fentanyl crisis, it's all coming from there. Human trafficking, sex trafficking, child trafficking. I mean, it's literally ground zero for it. And the Democrats, they're not even paying attention. Even the Border Patrol chief, I guess, the other day came out and was like, hey, man, we have no control. And it's not like they couldn't, because they did under Trump.
Yeah.
And Mayorkas is missing. Borders are. Kamala Harris is, cackling somewhere like an insane person. And doesn't matter.
Yeah. Well, I mean... It's bigger than people think. I mean, I just was watching the news right before I came over here, and there was a general that was testifying before Congress who was saying that we should expect another 9/11 type terrorist attack or something similar to that within 6 months. Why is that, Don? Because whenever we left Afghanistan, we pulled out of Bagram, and we left that prison where it was nothing but ISIS, hardened ISIS fighters, not Al-Qaeda, ISIS fighters that we had in Bagram. 7,000 of them in that prison. We let them go. The one that killed the 13 troops at the gate, that was an ISIS fighter that got out of that prison. Those people are finding their way to our southern border now. I promise you we are. Just since October, we've had 62 people that we know of that are on the terror watch list that we've caught crossing our border. Those are the people that try harder than anybody not to get caught. God knows how many of them have got across at this point.
If they caught 62, you have a thousands of mile long border. You have people well funded. There's a way to get across. If some poor immigrant family from Guatemala is able to sneak across with reasonable, success rates, despite going through obviously a torturous and scary process. Imagine if you had a little backing. Imagine you had the ability to pay for a little bit of assistance. I mean, it's got to be the easiest thing in the world.
And we've caught 10 times as many of those people since October of last year, 10 times more than the entire 4 years of the Trump administration, right? Because we had our border locked down, and we were treating our border like a serious issue, and we treated these people like a real national security threat. I guarantee you, there are terror cells that are setting up in the United States right now as we speak, and we're going to go back after it happens, and we're going to find out that they crossed our southern border because our southern border was wide open.
So like all of the things, I mean, is it incompetence or is it intentional?
It's intentional.
Is it just about manipulating the vote? You can get X number of immigrants to come through, therefore it's okay, and we're going to change the way we vote, and all is good.
You can't create a disaster like our southern border unless you want to, right? Like you said, all they had to do was do nothing. President Trump had everything in place. The border was secure, right? We had Remain in Mexico. We had Title 42. We had all these issues that we no incentive for people to come here, right? We had everything taken care of. The border was secure. All they had to do was not touch it. Just leave it alone and worry about something else. They went in and they intentionally undermined everything that he did, mainly a lot of parts just because it had his name on it. And they destroyed us in the process. But they're doing this intentionally. They're trying to get as many people over here as possible because they honestly think, you wait and you mark my word, people talk about, well, they want to make them citizens so they can vote. They don't care about them being citizens.
They just want to let them vote, Citizens means nothing. That's a whole different...
They don't need to be citizens. They live here. They should be able to vote here. They live here. They're going to abandon the citizenship that goes with voting. They're just going to say, if you live here, you can be able to vote here. We got people from 120 different countries crossing our border.
Okay, so what are the policies that we could enact? Obviously, we had sort of remain in Mexico.
Yeah, right.
That seemed to be effective. What are the other policies that we could implement to secure the border? Can you do anything at the state level? Could you put pressure, on Governor Abbott down in Texas to be able to do this? On, you're probably not going to get it out of Arizona because you have liberal policies, and again, they're okay with this.
Yeah.
I mean, let's call it what it is. It's an invasion, right?
You can do some of it in Texas at the state level. One of the things that slowed Abbott down a little bit, I think, is the threat from the Biden administration that if he uses the Texas Department of Public Safety, our highway patrol officers, to help secure the border and to start sending people back, that he will actually arrest those law enforcement officers. So I mean, and don't.
So we're going to arrest law enforcement officers for enforcing the laws because they want to selectively look at the immigrant. I mean, it's.
Yeah,
and it's dystopian bullshit. Like it's crazy. Like you wouldn't think that you could actually have this conversation, and yet if you've been launching for the last 6 years, none of it should be a surprise.
You know how they treat law enforcement officers. They're always looking for some reason to come after them legally on a personal level, right? They got rid of qualified immunity and everything else. So it's really putting those law enforcement officers at risk if you start asking them to do the federal government's job, which is what they'd have to do because the federal government will not do their job. But the first thing you need, the most important thing you need to secure our border, you need a president that has a relationship with the Mexican president. And it doesn't have to be like all lovey-dovey. It's like your dad, he told the Mexican president.
Carrot and stick.
Right. They need us way more than we need them. Let's not forget that, right? And your dad told him, like, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. And they said, well, I don't know. And he said, fine. Monday morning, every truck that crosses the border is going to have a 25% tariff on it right off the bat. And, so we use those
Next
tools.
day they call, President Trump, we'd like to work with you.
Guess what?
Hey.
We want to help out.
And it's so easy.
Yeah.
If you're just actually willing to do anything, but clearly they're not.
But you got Joe Biden, right? Everybody knows whether it's Putin or whether it's President Xi or whether it's the Mexican president, they all see Biden as a squish. He's just, they don't have any respect for him.
That's what's worse is, it's not just our allies being like, holy shit, America's not there anymore for us. It's our enemies chomping at the bit. Whatever China's plan was for taking over Taiwan, it's been rapidly accelerated because we've been displaying weakness. That's the nation. That's the nature of predation, right? A predator sees weakness. They go after the weakest. Now America, for the first time, perhaps in modern history, just looked at as they're laughing at us. When they watch our people, again, I want to learn about white rage, not winning wars. We're shocked and dismayed. The Taliban wasn't more diverse and inclusive. They're looking at it and be like, seriously?
Don, they are literally laughing at us. I was at the Munich Security Summit in Munich, Germany a few weeks ago, and I was shocked at how many other people from other countries that I was out, having dinner with and stuff, were literally laughing at Biden. They think he's a joke, right? Yeah. And our advocates, like you said, our allies don't trust us or respect us anymore, and our adversaries don't respect us or fear us anymore. And so, but if you had somebody who was strong and basically told the Mexican president, this is a national security issue for us, we are going to fix this with or without you. You will help us or not. Either way, we're doing this. I say you could reestablish Remain in Mexico right off the bat. We could put Title 42 back together, and we could figure out a way to do that. We finished building our wall, and more importantly, at this particular point, with the fentanyl the way it is and everything, and some of the drug cartels and how powerful they are getting right now, it's time to send our military back over there. Not to put troops in harm's way, not to put troops on the ground, but we have drone technology. We have
they are
cyber
a direct
technology.
threat to.
We have special forces units
100%.
that can train them and go after their labs, go after their supply routes.
Yeah, they're bitch slapping the Mexican military right now. I mean, the cartels are. They control it, and they have inside. I mean, everyone's sort of on the payroll, right? Like, we need to step up that aid, whether it's direct or indirect. Frankly, that someone will try to criticize me for saying it, but that's sort of the no-brainer, but they won't do it.
We need to treat these terrorist organizations like they're these
they are
terrorists.
terrorists.
Like organizations. Right?
The amount of Americans that have been killed directly or indirectly
Yeah.
through the fentanyl crisis, to the border crisis, through the human trafficking crisis, like that would be, a pandemic of epic proportions, and yet.
Yeah, I make the argument all the time, and I want to see I want to see Russia be defeated. I want to see the Ukrainians, get their land back. All this kind of stuff or whatever. But I make the point all the time: how many Americans die every day in Ukraine? 0. How many Americans die every day right here in the United States because of drug cartels? 300 a day.
Yeah, but we got 130 billion for Ukraine, but Americans like screw you guys. Like,
right? Yeah.
So speaking of pandemics, you were there in the White House, during. The start of the pandemic. You were there during the Fauci. So, what did you see there? What were the biggest missteps? What were the outright lies? Is there a path to restoring faith in our public health officials when we watched it get so politicized?
Right.
We saw it with you. That was the beginning of it. But then we saw this guy's like whatever he said was right, even if his emails contradicted everything he said. There was no talk about that, because I think that's important. Because if something like that happens again, why would any American have faith in anything that government officials are telling them these days? Because clearly it's all been proven to be bullshit. Even the things that were like obvious, like the Wuhan lab leak theory. Like, of course it started there. But if you said that, you're out.
Absolutely. And honestly, I wish I'd have been there when it started, but I actually left the White House and retired from the military and filed for office in December of 2019, a month before this all started. And if I had been there, I feel like I maybe could have had some kind of influence on it, specifically in throwing up some red flags about Fauci, to be honest with you, because I knew the guy from before, man. I knew what he's about.
Talk about that, because I think it's fascinating for people. Like, he's been made into this deity.
Yeah.
And yet, he's been wrong about everything since the 80s. How does a guy like that, who's clearly not the best doctor, clearly not the most, probably the best bureaucrat,
probably hasn't taken care of
he
a
probably
patient
was
in 40
great,
years.
Or that, and he was probably great at screwing anyone else who was an up-and-comer, meaning making sure that those people don't ever see the light of day. It's sort of like what we're talking about, stacking the deck. In these things, like someone who could have been good at handling a pandemic. No, that guy's a threat to my sovereignty, my being a god. And the left does seem to do that. They make gods, right? Greta Thunberg was a god of the government. Then it became Fauci for a little while. Now that he's discredited, we move on. The next god is Zelensky. He's the new god of the left, and Ukraine is the biggest issue in the world, and it's not, but that's the way they function.
Well, with regards to Fauci, I mean, you look at Napoleon syndrome, and this guy's like the textbook for that, right? I mean, he's got all of it, And this guy, here's what we're finding out now. This is why these hearings that we're doing are important, because I'm on the select committee for the origins of COVID and for COVID, right? And we're finding out already. We're digging into stuff. We got witnesses now. We got whistleblowers that are coming out, and they're talking about what happened. We're getting access to emails. We have emails that show, you know why Anthony Fauci was the way he was the entire time? Because he realized day one that he had funded this research. And he may be a rock star of the left right now, but history will reveal that this man funded the actual pandemic, and he knew he did, and that's why he went into
and lied about it.
And lied about it. Not only he lied about it, he got people on the telephone. They were saying basically this looks like it came from the lab. It looks like it came from the lab in Wuhan. Early on, we have information regarding those phone calls, and he
enjoyed being a hero so much that he was never going to let the true origins of it come out, because that would be a threat to his being on the cover of some bullshit Vanity Fair type magazine that no one actually reads.
He realized he was going to be the villain. If it was exposed to the world that he actually funded it, he wouldn't be their darling anymore, right? And he knew that was coming down the pike. So he got these people together on these phone calls, and he coerced them, and he told them, I don't want you talking about that. I don't want you talking about we need to come up. I don't think that it's possible that it's man-made. It had to have come from a wet market, and that was his talking point. He pushed everybody else. These people were disagreeing with him on the phone call. 2 days later, these people came out publicly and were saying the same thing that Anthony Fauci was saying. Guess what? We find out a few months later, every single one of them got $1 million NIH grants, right? Yep. He used the money that he had, and he has access to millions and millions of dollars in his job that he gets to decide who gets these $1 million grants and who doesn't. Tons of money. And he used that power that he had with the purse strings from the NIH to make people say what he wanted them to say and cover his tracks so that we couldn't tell right off the bat. What we're finding out now is that came from the lab in Wuhan. It was man-made. It was gain-of-function testing.
They all knew it, but they were bought off.
Anthony Fauci and NIH funded it.
And they all knew it. And he bought them off. Because, again, I don't just want accountability for Fauci. I mean, that's a great place to start, because he was clearly the biggest manipulator. I mean, he's a evil villain as far as I'm concerned. There's no redeeming qualities to this guy. and yet he's still a hero to the left for some reason.
Right.
And I think we can objectively see what you're saying, right? I mean, if people were like, wait a minute, bullshit, like I'm calling, like of course it came from the left. No, it's not. And guess what? If you agree with me and you say this publicly, you're going to benefit in your career. And what's scarier is that so many doctors just went along with it. And I will say the scariest part of the pandemic wasn't the pandemic itself, was for me watching how many Americans just went along blind like sheep.
Yeah, I agree.
And I was like, I thought freedom meant something to them because it does to me. And I was like, oh my God, like they all got in line. They all lived afraid. And I mean, I feel like guys like Fauci weaponized that fear.
They did. And not only they weaponized that, but they went to all the state boards, they give you your medical license, and they basically, all the state boards, which are very liberal in general, some of the more liberal people, run those things or whatever, and they were oh so happy to, to take that, they fed on that power and that authority that they got, just like, little blue town mayors and governors and everybody else did. They got off on the power and the authority that they got from these mandates and from these lockdowns and everything. They took those state boards and they used those state boards to threaten doctors who talked about hydroxychloroquine or any of these other, ivermectin.
Because it's proven and cheap.
Yeah.
So we can't have that. It's readily available. It's cheap.
Yeah.
Pfizer's not going to make $12 billion.
It's super safe. We've given billions of doses of it. Yeah.
And I can see that because I mean, like people are like, well, Trump listened to Fauci. Well, of course, at the time, like it's easy to look back now. You had to imagine he didn't. What the media would do. Yeah. They would have impeached him for not going to this. And so they weaponized that against everyone. So I love watching the Monday morning quarterbacks be like, oh, I would have fired him. And no, you wouldn't have. You're full of shit. You can say that now because you were never in the position to actually do it. And again, even me, right, sort of natural cynic.
Yeah.
I'd been through Russia. I'd seen what they do. I'd seen what they were willing to do. I've been in the room and then seen what was reported about what happened in the room. And I'm like, wait a minute. There's not even a pretense of objectivity, not even a semblance of truth. And yet didn't stop him from actually saying it. So even I knew, with my cynical mindset at that point, after 3 years of it, I was like, well, there's no way.
Yeah.
There's no way these guys would lie about. I mean, this is a pandemic. I mean, and again, I don't. If you weren't, and if you didn't have pre-existing conditions, if you didn't, I didn't think it's the end of the world. I mean, but it was real for a lot of people. Obviously, killed a lot of people. So I'm not saying it's not real. I'm just saying it wasn't, as dire to everyone. For example, I had it, I didn't even know I had it, I think.
This is why Biden is so different than Trump as far as the way they treated COVID, because whenever President Trump took over, when COVID happened, nobody knew anything about COVID. We were being told by everybody, including the Chinese to some extent, that this was going to be the pandemic that was going to wipe out half the population of the earth, right?
Yeah.
And that virus
didn't stop them from sending people to America. They couldn't travel to Shanghai or the other major cities of China, but we'll send them to America to make sure we distribute this thing amongst.
And they're responsible. The WHO's responsible. They knew some of that. They covered and everything. Anthony Fauci helped them because he immediately realized he was implicated in it. But, Trump did exactly what Trump should have done. Trump said, whoa, we got to shut everything down and we figure out what's going on, right? And what do we have do we have anything in the hopper to stop this? Get to work on a vaccine, right? And then, he basically he said, well, who do we need to reach to? Well, the National Institute of Health, the director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Disease, Anthony Fauci, the #1 authority of all infectious disease in the entire United States. You had to involve him. You had to involve the Surgeon General. You had to involve the CDC director. These are all people. What he didn't know was that these people were motivated by reasons that were impure. They were motivated.
And you would never, again, maybe we were all naive.
Yeah.
But again, I think at that point, my eyes had been opened to just how corrupt our systems are. But I still couldn't believe medicine.
Yeah, I know.
Could be that corrupted. And so we're sort of at the, I guess it's what? 3 years for 15 days to stop the spread, and then Trump sort of, and that's the talking point. Trump shut down. No, he shut down everything. Then he left it to the states.
Yeah.
Because that's what Republicans do. You leave it to the states to decide, right?
And as he started figuring stuff out, he started making corrections. He got rid of the WHO. First thing they did was bring WHO back. They're a big part of the problem, right?
Yeah. Well, they're on the China payroll, and it's sort of obvious, and that we're pretending that these are objective players, like the Chinese do that. They get these, they get the cobalt mines because they show up with the briefcase of cash. Let's not pretend the real world doesn't function the way it functions.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. But Trump did everything he was supposed to do right off the bat. He did everything that he was taking advice from the people he was supposed to be taking advice from. But like I said, some of them are motivated by stuff that we didn't know at the time. We found out now.
Well, I hope you're on that for accountability purposes, because again, you're one of the few guys that understands the details of the medicine. Beside that, I always love watching. I did a segment last week talking about the bank that collapsed. Silicon Valley Bank. It's like, well, they had a improv actor on the board. Like they had one banker. When you have more people that actually understand it, and I think Congress is guilty of that so often as well, right? Mm-hmm. They get on the banking or finance committees because they have seniority, not because they know anything about finance, and that's sort of problematic, right?
Right.
So I'd love to see, you on that. So you brought up sort of Trump, and you were there for 3 years.
Yeah.
What are the good White House Trump stories?
Oh, I got a lot of good ones. I mean, one of the ones I write about in my book that I'm most proud of, honestly, is the whole transgender thing. A lot of people don't know this, right? But he was in the White House one day, and he wanted to ban the transgender in the military, right? Because Obama had put that back in place. It obviously doesn't make any sense. I mean, it's bad for morale. It's there's a variety of reasons to do that. They're not deployable, all kinds of stuff. So they basically had been talking about banning transgenders in the military, and he was getting all kinds of advice from senior folks in the White House, from senior staff, from people at DOD, all these admirals and generals and stuff that were in there and everything, and they were still kind of even then they were already like pandering because of the Obama years. And
you had 8 years of Obama to sort of set up this notion that the woke stuff is real. Right. That's a lot of time. 8 years in someone's career, like a lot of good guys that you'd want in there sort of wash out or flush out or retire, and you can replace a lot of people in that.
What I figured out a while back is one of the reasons they do this. One of the reasons these generals, like Milley, white male, seems to be basically, saying everything, basically calling, people that look like him himself racist, and it doesn't make any sense sometimes. Is because when they get out, they can't lobby right away, right?
Correct.
There's rules on that, but you know what they can do? They can sit on boards. And you know what these boards do? These big corporate boards, you can't sit on those boards unless you've demonstrated how damn woke you are, right?
Yeah. So you're like the token conservative. Because you're a general and you did all this time. So like those board. So and I think it may have been you, because I was wondering. I'd asked the question, and I forget. I think we had this conversation months ago because I didn't know where it came from. I go, like, how does a guy that spent like his entire life in the military? Like, I still had this there's got to be something. And they're like, oh yeah, because like there's a general sentiment, other than Ukraine, maybe is changing it, but I think the average American on both sides doesn't want to be in the endless wars.
Right.
Okay. So there's no longer like, hey, I'm in the military, I'll go be on the board of Raytheon, because there's just not as much desire. So the way to spread the wealth a little bit is by getting on the woke corporate boards. Those corporate boards by design, and so it's changed the mindset of these generals who, again, many serve great, and they're not making a lot of money, they're not doing this. Now it's like, now it's time. So it's always follow the money, and so since there's not as much desire on those sort of military-industrial complex boards. The next step is Disney or Netflix or this, and they need their token conservative. So we get the token conservative that believes in the woke agenda and all of the bullshit associated therewith.
Yeah. And like I was saying, this is one of the reasons I love Trump, because he listened to all that stuff, and he knew what he wanted to do, but they were trying to talk him out of it. And they're like, hey, you can't do it right now. It's not politically the right time to do it, and we got to do a study first. And he's like, well, how long does the study take? Well, it'll take us 6 months to get the study together, take us a year to do the study, and then maybe we can do this. It will be about a year and a half. We can get this done. We'll do it. We'll get it done, but it's going to take some time. They were slow rolling it. They're giving him all these excuses why they couldn't do it politically now, and so on and so forth. And so he was kind of still mulling over it, and they thought they'd won that fight or whatever. And then he got on the helicopter. And we're lifting off the south lawn, and I'm sitting, over on the bench, where I normally sit. And he goes, Doc, come here for a second. And I come up and I sit down next to him, and he goes, let me ask you a question. What do you think about transgenders in the military? And I said, well, sir, I think it's bullshit. And he goes, why? And I said, well, look, sir, they come in the military, right? And what do they do? A lot of them are coming into the military just to get this surgery done now.
We're paying for the surgery. Like that's like their signing bonus. Like, so if you're already like, and again, I don't care what you do when you're an adult and stuff like that, but like, now pushing it on the children, if you wanted it, but like, if you're signing up for the military because they're going to pay for your gender reassignment surgery, like, I don't know, man. I don't know that I want that person served. I think there's plenty of other things for them to do than be given a gun and put in pressure situations.
Right. And that doesn't happen right away, right? Before they even do any of that stuff, they got to be in hormonal therapy for like a year or something before they.
Which also changes your mindset naturally, right?
Right, and all that, And so I'm a firm believer that if you don't know if you're a man or a woman or whatever, you're confused about that, you probably have some issues you need to work out before you decide you want to be in the military. That's my thinking to start with. Not only that, you come in and they put you on this hormonal therapy. They get this long program that lasts a year and a half to 2 years to transition you from a man to a woman. woman or a woman to a man, you're not deployable during that time. You know what? Guess who else gets to deploy? Everybody else that's in the unit gets to take your spot in Iraq and Afghanistan.
That's real?
Yes, they're
so
not
wait,
deployable.
So you could
frame.
sign up for like a 2-year tour.
Yeah.
Okay. Get your gender reassignment surgery.
Yeah.
And not actually have to do like the day job.
Yeah, because a lot of the stuff they're doing, they can't be overseas. They got to get their hormonal shots and stuff every day when they're going through this process. So they can't be. They have to be near a medical treatment facility. They can't be deployed to Iraq or Afghanistan. So I made all these arguments.
It feels like the biggest way to sort of game that system, check the military box, did that even. I went through basic training and then didn't do anything. It's like, wow, I didn't realize it was that bad.
I told the president too. I was like, here's the other thing too. It's like, they explain to me why it makes sense that that if my wife, not that she does, but if my wife wanted to go to the plastic surgeon or the surgeon in Walter Reed or at the military hospital and she wanted to get a new set of tits, that's considered an elective procedure. She can't do that. That's not authorized, right?
Well, what if she identified as someone with big tits but doesn't have
exactly. But the thing is, me as a man, if I go in and I say I want new tits, then that's a medically appropriate and necessary procedure, right? It's crap the way they treat this stuff. So I went through all these things about
that. So you would be able to get a government-funded boob job.
Of course, if I told him I wanted,
but a woman wouldn't.
Absolutely, I'd say I want to be a woman. I want a breast, and they'd do it, right?
Hey guys, I got news for you.
I'm not gonna do that.
It's fucking over, okay? Like it's over. Like civilization has ended. You try to make light of it. I spend my time, memes, because I feel like it shows how ridiculous it is, and and I don't want it to ever be hopeless for people.
Right.
But think about the conversation we're having, and it's real from a doctor, admiral, congressman. This shit's going on. We talk about it, and we laugh about it, but it's happening every day.
Yeah.
We're creating incentive structures that encourage, perhaps. The people who probably need the most help in society to join the military and be in high stress combat type situations, or maybe avoid them altogether to be able to pay for it, all funded by the U.S. taxpayer.
Yeah.
Then we say, well, you, Navy SEAL, who's been a badass patriot your whole life fighting, the difference between
right.
And I'm not allowed to, but I think you'd probably agree that there's probably a distinction between, levels of even serving. The guy that's done 12 tours in it, versus the guy that's, the chauffeur for the general somewhere on a base. Both great, but not quite the same.
Right.
And those guys are being singled out. Okay, it's okay to get rid of you because you don't go along with, a vax of an unproven science that's bullshit to someone who has no pre-existing conditions.
Right.
The SEAL teams. The people who are literally in the best physical shape in the freaking world. And that guy, he could get COVID every day and it'd be like nothing. It's just walk it off. It's lunacy.
Yeah.
But it's going on every day. So what happened then with Trump when you were like, okay, it's bullshit? He was like, I kind of agree.
So he called me up there and he said, what do you think about transgenders in the military? And I said, I looked around, I was like, off the record? And he goes, yeah. So I told him what I thought and everything. And he's like, well, that's what, he goes, yeah, you're absolutely right. And he goes, they're trying to tell me this, trying to tell me that. And I said, you're going to do it, right? And he goes, I'm going to do it. And I said, so what does it matter if you do it now, or you do it 6 months from now, you do it a year from now? It's not like they're not going to come after you 6 months or a year from now. It's going to be the same outcome as far as the far left and everybody else is concerned. And he was like, you know what? You're right. We're going to do it. And then the next morning, he announced that no transgenders in the military. And he said he had discussed with his admirals and generals, or with his high-ranking, whatever. And then everybody in the Pentagon.
Ronny's oh shit.
Yeah, there was a scramble. Who's been talking to the president about this? And I was like, not me. I was just like,
I'm going to remain silent. But
that's why I love him, because he does things that other people won't do. I mean, if he thinks something's the right thing to do, he will do it, regardless of how many people stand in the Oval Office in front of him. It could be 99 out of 100 telling him not to do it for a variety of reasons. They all got their own motivations, but if he thinks it's something important, he will do it anyways. He will get criticized for it afterwards, and 3 or 4 months later, we'll find out that he was right and they were wrong. It happened. It's repeated itself over and over and over in the Trump administration.
What about sort of personal stories? That's a kind of a cool policy story. Because again, what people don't understand, though, why don't you just do this? It's like, it's not as easy. You may be the most powerful man in the world, but you have so many levels of this. And when you're 12 generals, and again, if you came out against Trump, you could be a general in the military who's supposed to be apolitical, serving the president, and it didn't matter.
Yeah.
If you came out against Biden, oh my God, it's the end of the world. If you came out and said something about Obama, what they did to you is the perfect example. It's like, there's just different rules.
Yeah.
People don't understand that.
Yeah.
And when you have the entire might of everyone else in the U.S. government saying, well, we disagree with Trump and he's wrong, even if he's proven right 6 months later, you still get the objective.
Yeah.
Right? Wuhan lab leak theory, of course it was, but they weaponized it to get what they wanted. Every aspect, we're laughing on it now and we're dunking on them. Of course we were right. Guess what? They won.
Yeah.
They got everything that they wanted out of it. Who cares? Yeah. There's no consequence for being wrong 2 years later, as we've seen in government. Yeah. There's no consequence for total incompetence, as we've seen. So, and I do it myself, but, dunking on the victories, because of course we were right. But what we're missing is the big picture is that they still got what they wanted.
Yeah, they still got what they wanted.
And there's no accountability now, so they'll do it again.
Yeah, at the end of the Obama administration, a lot of people that were political appointees, knowing they were going to lose their job and the next administration came in that was a Republican administration, they took jobs as career employees, right? SES is in the career side or whatever. You can't get rid of those people, right? So the whole government was inundated with those people. And I think one of the problems that the only thing Trump did wrong when he first came in, to be honest with you, is he made some assumptions that weren't right. And he assumed he got elected president of the United States. He rolls in, the executive office of the president, all of these executive branches that belong to him, that they now share his agenda and they're going to help him push his agenda. And he didn't realize that
that's
2 or 3 levels down, there's these career employees that are liberal, that are woke, that have been put there by previous administrations, and every single day they were doing everything they could to cut his legs out from under him. And it wasn't obvious at first.
No, and you wouldn't. I mean, that was both the good and the bad of coming, from outside. Yeah. Coming from outside, you didn't have to play by their rules, but coming from outside, you also wouldn't ever assume.
Well,
that's the case. I think the best thing about a lot of good policies, obviously, but I think the best thing about the Trump presidency, it opened other people's eyes.
Yeah.
And I think they also tried to make a very clear example of him, hey, if you come from the outside, this is the shit you're going to take. We're going to impeach you for nonsense. We're going to do this. To discourage anyone from ever wanting to even play that game. Because if you're a successful, businessman, billionaire, why would you give up
the biggest thing
to go get shit on?
It wasn't even. It was the fact that he was a disruptor. That freaked them out. That scared the shit out of everybody in D.C., including Republicans that were part of the deep state, right? The deep state was real. I mean, he didn't know it at first, but he figured it out pretty quick. I'm getting my legs cut off from under me, and it's not coming from the outside, it's coming from the inside, right? Because it was all these deep state actors there. They're real. But these people, nobody really, they weren't really visible during the Obama administration because they shared the Obama administration's ideology. So they were helping, not undermining President Obama with his agenda. But whenever President Trump came in, and he was a Republican, he was an outsider coming in, but more importantly, he literally started draining the swamp. That freaked everybody out because these people are swamp creatures. They know the swamp. They love the swamp. The swamp is where they thrive. It's where they make their money. Even some these rhino Republicans, they thrive in the swamp, right? And so there was a push, and you've seen it. There were a whole bunch of people in the White House that were part of our administration that were Republicans. They were also trying to cut his, General Kelly and people like that. They were trying to cut his legs out from under him.
They also know. Hey, whether it's 4 or 8 years, there'll be a time after Trump. There probably won't be another Trump.
Right.
And we got to make sure we still appease the powers that be in Washington, because again, that's that next job. It's that the distance. Everyone's like, oh, he's a government, government official. He's doing it no, most of these guys. Very few are doing it for the right reasons.
Right.
At those levels, they're just bureaucrats, and they're good at excelling at being a bureaucrat, far better. And they're far more qualified at that than they are actually doing the job they're supposed to be doing.
Yeah, and a lot of them are kind of like you hear about, university professors, man. They always say those that can do, those that can't teach. It's the same with these career employees in the government. They can't do anything on the outside because they're literally mostly incompetent people that have risen to the level just because they've been part of the government. You can't fire them.
Yeah, so they're going to protect that.
Yeah.
They're protecting that at all costs because they have nowhere to go. They're literally up against a wall.
Yeah.
So best personal Trump story, non-policy.
Non-policy, that's a good one. I got some I probably can't tell, but no, I think that just my best memories of him, and one of the reasons I got close to him early on was because I'd been there long enough to kind of know that I had to get to know him really quick because I didn't know any of you guys when you showed up, right? And I pissed everybody in the Obama administration off that I was staying, but I stayed because a lot of the folks in the transition team were Bush folks that had knew me during the Bush administration. They asked me to stay. They made a play for you need to make sure that the med unit doesn't get dropped. Everything's kicking on all cylinders. We don't want to mess that up. Take that off our plate. So I did. I agreed to stay 6 months. I was just going to stay 6 months and get out. But what happened is, like, I realized week one, I'd be listening to radio, Secret Service, I'd have the radio in, and they're calling out all those movements, mogul here, mogul there, and then, moving the elevator, right? And so I'd get up out, my office, this, a lot of people don't, it's in the ground floor of the White House, directly below the president's bedroom, right at the bottom of the elevator, and they'd call out, that he was moving to the elevator. I'd get up, I'd go stand in the door, he'd walk out of the elevator, and I'd go, "Morning, Mr. President," and he'd be like, "Morning, Doc," and, he'd been up for 3 hours before anybody else even showed up at the White House, watching TV, tweeting, talking on the phone, whatever.
I remember 4 o'clock in the morning. You know what your dad just said? I'm like, oh God, please, it's too early.
Yeah. By the time he dropped down that elevator, he was looking for somebody to talk to, right? And I was the first person he'd see. And he'd go, "Did you see this? Did you see that?" Never anything to do with, with medicine or whatever. Just whatever's happening during the day. Could have been Iran. Could have been Stormy Daniels. It was whatever was on TV, right? And I'd be like, "Yes, sir." And he's like, we'd start talking about it. And he'd go, "Walk with me." And I'd walk down the West Colonnade. I'd walk down the Oval Colonnade. I'd walk in the back of the Oval Office with him. We'd finish up our conversation. And then, National Security Advisor, Chief of Staff, whoever would be in the outer Oval waiting to come in. I'd walk out. They'd walk in. His day would start. But I got to know him like really, really well right off the bat, and I realized, man, I love this guy, man. I didn't know him at all. Like, when I was worried when you guys showed up, because I'd actually, had a pretty good relationship with the Bushes, pretty good relationship with the Obamas. They'd treated me and the rest of the military and stuff really well. And then you guys were coming in. It was kind of an unknown. You know, these rumors, that oh, it's going to be horrible for the military. It's going to be horrible for the Secret Service and everything. And then I remember January 20, 2017, the inauguration night. We came back from all the balls and everything, and you guys were all in the dip room, and the first thing I noticed is your kids and Jared and Ivanka's kids running around all over the thing, climbing on the furniture. I was like, oh my God, what have I got myself into? I'm a freaking pediatrician, and so, but it was great, man. But I was so, just pleasantly surprised. Your family is so nice, man. You're so considerate, so respectful, and just so easy to talk to and get to know. And so I ended up, loving working for, taking care of you guys, your brothers and sisters, your kids, everybody else. And I loved President and Mrs. Trump. I mean, I really developed a lot of respect for him, and I think he developed a lot of trust and confidence in me early
100%.
on. That's how our relationship started, and that's why I was supposed to be there 6 months, and I stayed till the bitter end, till 3 years, until it was time for me to get in the fight and go to Congress.
And now you're in Congress, man, and
I
I think you're crushing it. I look forward to the future aspirations of Ronny Jackson, because it's nice to, there's a lot of guys in Congress, but you're one of the few guys that may talk faster than me.
Yeah, exactly.
You may be, I may be a low energy individual compared to you, man. So I really appreciate it. And
I'll tell you,
as these things develop, I want to definitely have you back. And I think our people are going to want to see what's, the action plan, what's really happening behind the scenes. And I think, it's just awesome that you're so open and honest about it.
Absolutely. And I'll tell you one last thing too. People ask me all the time, like, who was your favorite president? I'm like, it was Trump, hands down. People are like, well, why? And I thought about it one day. I was like, I don't know. I mean, a whole bunch of reasons, but why? And I realized, you know what? Part of it is like he's fun to work for, right? Because I'm an emergency medicine doc, right? And so I'm in the emergency department.
There's always an emergency.
And like 90% of the stuff that comes through the door is kid with a runny nose, this, that, and the other. But every shift, at one point or another, unexpectedly, there's someone who bursts through the door with the butcher knife sticking out of their chest, right? That's what working for Trump's like every day. You get on the one, you're like, oh my God, what happened? We did what we said. What?
Holy shit! Code red. We're going hot. Let's go figure this thing out.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate it, Ronny. Thank you so much.
Thank you, man.
Great to see you, and we'll definitely have you back on.
Thank you for what you're doing.
Thank you, man. And thank you guys for tuning in. We appreciate all of you. Guys, also want to thank our sponsors. And before I go fully there, we got my little man, Spencer, here. He's my youngest boy. How you doing, Spencer?
Good.
So Spencer was watching, and he was curious what was going on, and he wanted to come on. And so I said, I will do a segment with Spencer, right? Because it takes some guts to actually want to, just like it takes guts to sponsor this show, it takes some guts to want to do that. And we got to nurture the little people. When they want to try something and get out of their comfort zone, Spencer's usually my shy one. But he's also my outdoor buddy, right? Mm-hmm. What did we do last week?
We went to the Bahamas.
And what did we do?
We went spearfishing and fishing.
And how much fish did we have? Did we get a bunch?
Yeah.
Did you catch, how many fish did you catch?
Like 4.
And did we have them for dinner?
Yeah.
Did we do like a father-son dinner where we cooked? Mm-hmm. How did we cook them?
We fried them.
We fried them. So Spencer, like I said, my youngest of my 3 boys, 4th child of 5, and he was just curious about what was going on here. And he is my buddy, and he's had spring break, and with as many kids as I have, and I know how that happens now, so I got a new hobby like spearfishing and fishing and other stuff.
so we don't end up with any more of them, right? But all of their spring breaks were like different and different ages and all that. So Spencer's been hanging out with me all week. We've had an awesome time. And he wanted to come on the show. And I want to also take the time to thank our sponsors. Again, Field of Greens, a great option, guys. If you're not getting the nutrition that you need, if you want not a supplement, but something that's 100% whole food, made in America, by an American company, definitely check out Field of Greens. They literally have a better health promise that if you try their product and at your next doctor visit, if the doctor doesn't say something like, again, whatever you're doing, keep it up, return it for a full refund. I use it to make up for the lack of good food in my diet, and I legitimately feel a lot better when I'm taking it because I know I'm getting the nutrition that I'm probably not getting at airport fast food. So check out fieldofgreens.com and use the promo code Don Jr. Let them know where it's coming from. Again, if they have the guts to go out on a limb and support a show like this, let them know you're checking them out because of me. It helps us all. So fieldofgreens.com, promo code Don Jr. Get 15% off your first order or 10% off recurring orders. And also, guys, if you're as sort of scared about what's going on in the world financially, whether it's the stock market and dropping 1,000 points last week and the insanity and the stupid morons making our financial decisions and our banking decisions, with woke ideologies, and you've watched the banks collapse over the last 2 weeks, take a chance and go look at Goldco to make sure your portfolio is diversified. And if it's not, think about doing that now so you don't get crushed like others. But again, the guys at Goldco can take your precious metals. You can put your IRAs in there with no penalties. Again, support companies who support you instead of those who hate your guts. Go to donjrgold.com to learn more. That's donjrgold.com to learn more. And again, if you're like me, you're looking at it like we're in 2008 all over again. The banks are failing. People are making stupid decisions. Maybe a good time to check that out and just, again, go there and learn more. That's, all you can do. You don't even have to try it, but see if it's right for you. donjrgold.com. For those of you who are subscribed on Locals, I'm going to go over there, do a live Ask Me Anything right after we get done with this. But I just wanted to bring my man on because he is my buddy. Who did better in shooting today?
Me.
What? Are you? What?
I beat you.
Did? Not really. It was like by like 0.3 seconds, 0.013 seconds.
No, 0.20. I was counting.
You were. I know you were counting. I think you were a little late on the stopwatch, though. Don't you think?
Oh yeah, I was.
Oh, so you're admitting that you were cheating? What? You don't admit it? But he's my like I said, he's my outdoor buddy, and we've had a lot of fun this week. We went out shark fishing the other night, right? Mm-hmm. Late. Mm-hmm. And you've had a lot of late nights for the last couple of nights, huh? So. But we've had an awesome week trying to balance all the spring breaks, and I'm taking his sister, who hasn't started spring break yet, away next week, and it's a little bit of a nightmare work-wise, but we got to take in the time. And it was really cool to see a little man like this, who I'd say sometimes you're actually pretty shy with a lot of people, and there's thousands and thousands of people watching this, and like you were like, can I come on for a little bit? I was like, yes. Those are the kind of instances that guys and parents, like, we got to pounce on. We got to give them the opportunity to succeed and do the things that take them out of their comfort zone. That's how you grow, and you learn a lot more by failure than you ever do from the wins, in my opinion. And this was actually a pretty solid win, buddy. You did really good. I'm proud of you. You have fun? Mm-hmm. You want to do an entire episode with me one time?
Yeah.
What do you want to talk about?
I don't know.
You don't know? You going to talk about beating me in shooting again?
Yep.
How about when I win? Gonna talk about that or not? We're gonna just not casually...
It's not possible.
It's not possible. Well, he certainly has the Trump genes. I love you. You're a good man. You did good. I'm proud of you. Mm-hmm. Guys, thanks again for tuning in. Check out our sponsors. Go check me out over on Locals. I'll be heading over there shortly. I'm gonna do a live Ask Me Anything. A little bit of a crazy week in so many ways, but I'm glad you guys are here, and it's been a success because of you. So anything you guys can do to push this out there, make sure people see it, make sure people have a chance to actually get some real news, and not the stuff that's been sort of whitewashed for you by
mainstream media and social media and all the other lunatics out there is absolutely awesome. You guys are the best. I love you almost as much as I love this little creature, this little man. It's so good. I can't believe it. But tonight you got to go to bed early, okay?
Why?
I don't know. I've been letting you get away with murder. And frankly, I think you've been wearing me down. What do you think?
No.
No? All right. Well, we're going to have some fun. I'm going to make him dinner after locals. You guys are the best. I'll see you there in a few minutes.